Josh, we're going to start with solution on the spot segment. So we're on the spot together. You're not in this alone. But here's where I wanted to take our conversation today. So, there's a lot of work that we have had the privilege of doing. And I think there's major questions all the time around, from technologists to people who are technologists. What's the value? Why do it? Why pay for it? Especially in the public sector, right? Like, we're stewarding citizen dollars, taxpayer funds, whatever. So what's the investment? What's the ROI? So for this solution on the spot, I want to hear and collaborate with you on, say we walk into a new state we've never been in. And we're talking to not an agency leader, but the director of the budget for the state, somebody who's looking at where all the dollars go and approving where those dollars go for the return on investment for citizens and taxpayers. If that person were to ask us, why invest in data solutions? Why invest in more than just keeping the lights on and making sure the programs are effective? Where do you begin to unpack the potential value there?
It's a really easy one for me. So we'll use a term here, and I'll probably say it throughout the segment. So longitudinal data is where it's at. I'm an O&B director and trying to manage a budget. So finite resources, we only have so much money, taxpayer dollars. We have to use that to get the best outcome for citizens that we can. If you go back 5 years before states started to aggregate data the way they have, it was very myopic the way we looked at a program, which is, okay, you an individual entered into this, we did some things for you, and you exited. I have no idea what happened before that. I have no idea what happened after that. So there are huge insights to know what happened when you went off of unemployment. And did you get a job? And did you have higher wages? And so if I'm talking to an O&B director, I don't think you need to start big. You can start small here. The ability to aggregate data across state government to look at a whole human is enormously valuable to improving programs and understanding what levers we should pull to make them as impactful as possible. Before, and right now in a lot of agencies, it's just, I see this period of time, I don't see the whole. That to me is sort of the elevator pitch I would be talking about and thinking about if I'm that person and considering how to leverage.
Yeah, and it's public versus private is very similar functionally, very different semantics, right? So if I was a private sector, experienced leader, some of the language that you just used even can sound far away, right? But the reality is, it's kind of like, am I just funding my programs to keep running, or do I want to innovate and make them better? Do I want to find ways that I can use better outcomes? So to your point on unemployment and workforce, right? I don't know. I think most people have a friend. There's 1 degree separation between them and unemployment. Somebody's been through it. Family members experienced it. And I think when we start to understand the systems that help us run those programs, and you realize what's federally funded and what does the state budget have to carry, if there are ways that we can leverage the data for each state uniquely to understand what their industries are doing and what's hot and how do we get people trained up or transfer their skills quickly and effectively, they can wage up, they can make more money, they can have a better life. There's some of that regardless of red or blue, it's better outcomes for citizens. And so as an O&B director, regardless of your state, regardless of whether it's a Republican or Democrat, there's some reality to, we can make lives better. That's what we're in the business of doing, not just administering programs.
Yeah, and let's take that example of unemployment insurance. I know it's a federal program, which maybe isn't the top of consciousness for an O&B director, but there's tons of dollars that are invested in upskilling and training individuals on the unemployment program. If we knew more, for example, what grades you got in high school and college, and things you've done before in the workforce, and if we're able to model your type of individual, and we know what training works best for you to get a better outcome once you get back in the workforce, or what gets you back to the workforce quicker, those are all things that help the Fed and the state on how they use dollars. So get you off of unemployment sooner, gets that person to a better life sooner. And so that's a great example of using data to help drive sort of decision-making and where you invest dollars in different places. So I think while it's a Fed program, there's lots of state dollars that are around it. And what's the highest and best use of those? We can kind of guess. We know that maybe we're a manufacturing state. That isn't specific enough. And with the type of data I'm talking about longitudinally across state government, you can get very specific about what works best for an individual. And that's where the real power.
So experientially, right, we've had the privilege of meeting some people that follow this persona. And I think one of the most probably ignorant things I've ever asked anyone, and I'm just happy to explain on this. There was a O&B director that I had noticed had I was like, are you into the hobby of like corrections facilities. Like, what's the deal? Like, why are we touring jails all the time? And I just was curious enough to be like, what's up with like you got your next prison tour in a month? And they were like, have you ever looked at a state budget? Have you ever really looked at a state budget to understand what are the highest costs of the state? And if we can reduce recidivism, yes, we would like less criminals. Yes, we want people out of jail. Also, it does make it more affordable for us to infuse better services to the state when we're spending less on the ones that we currently are already committed to solutioning for. So I think thinking about the state like a business was really helpful to be like, oh, if we help people out of that world, it's good for them and it's good for the whole state. Those are some of the things where I think I've seen private sector people come over to public sector and apply that kind of framework to agencies or to the state. And it's generated really good buy-in across, again, whatever party you're in, to just say, turns out good citizen outcomes tend to help everybody. It's a win-win.
Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive. So it's not just cost savings and you can't get good outcomes. It can be both, and data's a good path to that.
Awesome. Okay. Any last thoughts on this or like parts before we walk out the door of the O&B director that you'd want to make sure you impress upon them?
No, I'll talk about this later in the segment too, but just start the journey and probably start small. We have states in the U.S. that have done amazing jobs with this. California is on the journey right now to that. Indiana's done a good job with it, where they brought it all together. It doesn't have to be an agency or a specific program where we try it. So find something that's impactful, find something that aligns to a governor's initiative, and then try and make a difference and just start the journey.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you for joining us on the Solution on the Spot.